Elias Johnson had been traveling across the country for weeks, sealing business deals and checking on his investments. Tonight, he just wanted a quiet place to rest before his early morning meeting. The glowing sign of the five-star Grand Regency Hotel promised comfort, luxury, and peace. Elias, dressed casually in jeans and a polo shirt, walked in with his small overnight bag. The lobby buzzed with activity, guests checking in, bellboys carrying luggage, and the receptionist typing furiously behind the counter. Elias waited patiently in line, scrolling through his phone. When it was finally his turn, he smiled warmly and handed over his ID and credit card. The receptionist, a tall man named Richard, barely glanced at the documents before raising his brow. "I'm sorry, sir," he said flatly. "We're fully booked tonight." Elias tilted his head slightly. He had just seen two couples check in before him. "Fully booked?" he repeated calmly. "I made a reservation online this morning, under Elias Johnson." Richard tapped a few keys, then smirked. "Ah, yes, I see it here. Unfortunately, there seems to have been a mistake. We can't accommodate you." Before Elias could respond, a white couple walked up behind him. Without hesitation, Richard smiled at them. "Welcome to the Grand Regency. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes," the woman answered. Richard immediately began checking them in. Elias stood frozen, realizing exactly what was happening. He wasn't being denied because of a mistake. He was being rejected because of the color of his skin. His jaw tightened, but he didn't raise his voice. Instead, he picked up his bag, looked Richard in the eye, and said quietly, "You'll regret this." Then he walked out into the night, already planning his return. Elias walked down the bustling street, the cool night air brushing against his face. He wasn't a man who allowed anger to consume him, but what happened inside the Grand Regency burned deep. For years he had dealt with subtle racism in business meetings, boardrooms, and even restaurants. But tonight, the blatant dismissal reminded him why he fought so hard to build his empire. He stopped at a small cafe still open across the street. Sitting by the window with a cup of coffee, Elias pulled out his tablet. He logged into his secure account, scrolling through properties his real estate firm had acquired. Hotels, resorts, office towers. He owned dozens across the country, often under different holding companies. Ironically, the Grand Regency was one of the few he had never considered buying. Until now. As he sipped his coffee, his mind began to calculate. The Grand Regency's stock had been slipping for months. Rumors of debt and poor management had already circulated in the circles Elias moved in. He knew with the right push, the hotel chain would be vulnerable. Elias wasn't just wealthy, he was strategic. Billionaire status didn't come from luck, it came from patience, vision, and timing. Tonight had given him all three. He leaned back, smirking to himself. The receptionist, Richard, had no idea who he had insulted. To him, Elias was just another black man without status or power. That ignorance was about to cost the hotel dearly. As the night stretched on, Elias drafted emails to his advisors. By morning, he would have meetings set up. By the end of the week, the hotel that rejected him would be in his crosshairs, and soon after, it would be in his hands. The next morning, Elias sat in his sleek corner office, overlooking the skyline. Sunlight reflected off the glass towers, but his mind was fixed on one thing, the Grand Regency. His assistant, Maya, entered with her usual efficiency, a tablet in hand. "You asked me to pull the financial reports," she said, handing him the device. "And you were right. The Grand Regency chain is in trouble. Declining occupancy, lawsuits from employees and their shareholders are restless. If someone makes the right offer, they won't refuse." Elias scanned the numbers, a slow smile curving across his lips. "Perfect. Let's schedule a meeting with the board." Today, within hours, Elias and his team were seated in a high-rise conference room downtown. Across from them sat 3 board members of the Grand Regency, visibly nervous. They had heard of Elias Johnson before. His reputation as a real estate tycoon preceded him. But they hadn't expected him to be interested in their failing hotel chain. "Mr. Johnson," one board member began, adjusting his tie nervously, "are you seriously considering acquiring us?" Elias leaned forward, calm but commanding. "Not considering. I'm here to buy. I know your numbers. I know your debt. And I know that if I don't step in, your competitors will eat you alive. I'm offering you a way out, and a profitable one at that." The room went silent. Elias's presence filled the space. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a force. After a moment, the board members exchanged glances. They had no idea that just 12 hours earlier, their own employee had turned this man away. What they didn't realize yet was that Elias wasn't only buying a hotel chain. He was preparing to teach them a lesson in respect. The negotiations stretched late into the evening. Elias sat calmly at the head of the long mahogany table, his sharp suit contrasting with the anxious expressions of the Grand Regency board members. Papers were spread across the table, contracts, financial breakdowns and proposals. "We're prepared to offer a 40% premium above your current market valuation," Elias said smoothly, sliding a folder toward them. "That's more than fair, considering the state of your operations." One of the board members, a grey-haired man named Thomas, frowned. "Why us, Mr. Johnson? With your wealth and connections, you could buy any hotel chain in the country." Elias leaned back, a calm fire in his eyes. "Because I see potential where others see failure, and because I never let opportunity pass me by." He didn't mention the receptionist. He didn't mention the insult. That part of his plan would come later. After hours of back and forth, the board finally agreed. Pens scratched against paper, and with a few final signatures, the Grand Regency hotel chain officially belonged to Elias Johnson. Maya, standing quietly in the corner, allowed herself a small smile. She knew Elias well enough to sense there was more to this acquisition than just business. When the board members left, Elias remained seated, gazing at the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He had just spent millions, but he felt no hesitation. This wasn't just about money, it was about dignity. "Prepare a press release," he told Maya. "Tomorrow the world learns about the new ownership of the Grand Regency." Maya hesitated before asking, "And what about the staff at the flagship hotel?" Elias's smirk returned. "That's where it begins." The next morning, Richard would arrive at work, never expecting the shock waiting for him. The Grand Regency's lobby was as polished as ever the next morning, marble floors gleaming, chandeliers casting soft golden light, and guests bustling in and out. Richard, the receptionist, stood behind the counter straightening his tie. To him, it was just another day at work. Then the front doors slid open, and in walked Elias Johnson. This time, he wasn't in jeans and a polo. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, a silver tie, and a presence that made heads turn instantly. His polished shoes clicked against the marble as he approached the same counter where Richard had humiliated him. Richard froze, recognition flickering across his face. "You again?" he muttered, annoyed. "I told you yesterday," but before he could finish, Maya stepped forward, handing Richard a crisp folder. "Good morning. As of today, Mr. Elias Johnson is the new owner of the Grand Regency hotel chain, effective immediately." The color drained from Richard's face. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Around them, staff and guests began to murmur. Elias leaned on the counter, his voice calm but sharp. "Yesterday you told me there was no room for me here. Today I assure you, there's plenty of room. For everyone, except those who believe skin color determines worth." Richard stammered. "Yes, sir, I didn't mean—" "You meant every word," Elias cut him off. "But don't worry, you won't be making that mistake again. You're dismissed. Effective immediately." Gasps rippled through the lobby as two security guards, now under Elias's command, escorted Richard out of the hotel. Elias turned to the remaining staff, his voice steady and commanding. "This hotel will change. From today, discrimination has no place here. Only excellence, respect, and integrity." The applause that followed wasn't just polite, it was genuine. Elias had returned, and he was in charge. News traveled fast. By noon, local reporters were gathered outside the Grand Regency, cameras flashing, microphones ready. The whispers of a billionaire takeover had already hit the business world, but the dramatic firing in the hotel lobby had turned it into breaking news. Elias stood at the podium set up in front of the grand entrance, Maya at his side. Behind him, the hotel staff lined up, uncertain but hopeful. Guests lingered in the background, curious to witness what was happening. "Good afternoon," Elias began, his voice steady and commanding. "As of today, I am the proud new owner of the Grand Regency hotel chain. This acquisition is more than a business decision. It is a commitment to excellence, fairness, and respect for every guest and employee." The reporters leaned in, pens scribbling furiously. Elias continued, his gaze firm. "Last night, I came here as a traveler seeking rest. I was denied service, not because of lack of space, but because of the color of my skin. That experience was not only unacceptable, it was a reminder of how far we still have to go. I refuse to let such behavior stand in any institution I lead. Cameras flashed. Gasps spread through the crowd. I want to be clear, Elias said, his tone sharpening. This hotel, under my leadership, will welcome all guests with dignity. Discrimination of any kind will not only be discouraged, it will be grounds for immediate termination. Today, we begin a new chapter for the Grand Regency. Applause erupted from staff and guests alike. The reporters shouted questions, but Elias simply raised a hand. You'll see the changes, not in words but in actions. As he stepped down from the podium, Maya whispered, "That was powerful." Elias smiled faintly. That was just the beginning. The very next day, Elias convened a meeting with the entire management team of the Grand Regency's flagship hotel. They gathered in the elegant boardroom, unsure of what to expect. Some wore forced smiles, others looked nervous. Richard's sudden firing had already sent ripples of fear through the staff. Elias entered the room with Maya by his side, carrying a slim black folder. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I bought this hotel chain because I believe in potential," he began, his voice low but firm. "But potential means nothing without the right people to carry it forward. So let me be clear. What happened here yesterday will never happen again under my leadership." The managers exchanged uneasy glances. Elias opened the folder, pulling out a list. "I've already reviewed complaints from staff and guests, those of you who fostered discrimination, cut corners or abused your positions. You're done." Gasps spread across the room as he began reading names. One by one, certain managers were asked to leave. Some protested, some begged, but Elias remained unmoved. "Your behavior doesn't align with the future of this company," he said simply. Security escorted them out, just as Richard had been the day before. When the room was half empty, Elias turned to the remaining staff. His tone softened slightly. "Now, for those who remain, you are here because I believe in you. You'll be given the resources, training and support to make this hotel not just successful, but exemplary. But loyalty goes both ways. I demand excellence, fairness and integrity in everything you do." There was a long silence before a young manager finally spoke up. "Mr. Johnson, thank you. No one's ever stood up like this for us before." Elias gave a small nod. "This is just the start." Within a week, Elias had completely reshaped the atmosphere of the Grand Regency. What once felt like a stiff, elitist establishment was now buzzing with energy and hope. Employees walked with their heads higher, guests noticed friendlier service, and the community began to see the hotel in a new light. Elias gathered the staff in the ballroom for what he called a town hall meeting. The chandeliers sparkled above, but the room felt warmer, more welcoming than ever before. Every housekeeper, bellboy and receptionist stood shoulder to shoulder, waiting to hear from their new owner. Elias stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. "I didn't buy this hotel to simply run another business," he said. "I bought it to build something greater, a place that sets the standard for hospitality, a place where every guest feels at home and every employee feels valued." Applause rippled through the room. He continued, "We will implement new training programs, fair promotion opportunities, and incentives for exceptional service. But more importantly, we will build a culture based on respect. No more favoritism, no more prejudice. From the doorman to the general manager, everyone here matters." Maya then unveiled the new motto on a large screen behind him, the Grand Regency, luxury with respect. Cheers filled the ballroom. For the first time in years, employees believed in their workplace. Elias watched their faces light up, knowing this was bigger than himself. After the meeting, several staff members approached him personally, sharing stories of being overlooked, dismissed, or discriminated against under the old management. Elias listened carefully to each one, making notes and promises. As he left the ballroom, he whispered to Maya, "This place will be more than a hotel. It will be a symbol." And deep down, he knew he was just getting started. Word of Elias's bold takeover spread quickly beyond the hotel walls. Newspapers hailed him as a visionary, while social media buzzed with clips of his powerful speech. Hashtags like "luxury with respect" and hashtag Elias Johnson trended worldwide. Guests who once overlooked the Grand Regency now flocked to it, curious to experience the new era. Inside the hotel, change was visible everywhere. The front desk now greeted guests warmly, offering smiles instead of suspicion. Housekeepers were given proper recognition, their schedules balanced to avoid exhaustion. Chefs in the kitchen spoke of how they finally felt heard, no longer silenced by arrogant managers. Elias walked through the lobby one evening, pausing to watch a black family check in. The receptionist, a young woman he had promoted just days earlier, welcomed them with kindness. Elias caught the father's grateful glance and nodded in return. That simple exchange reminded him why this fight mattered, but not everyone celebrated. Behind closed doors, whispers circulated in the corporate world. Some rival hoteliers scoffed at his methods, claiming he was making the industry too political. Others worried about how his changes might pressure them to reform their own practices. Meanwhile, former employees who had been dismissed, including Richard, began speaking bitterly in the press. "He's making it about race," Richard sneered in one interview. But the public wasn't swayed. The proof of Elias's vision was unfolding daily. Maya approached him that night in his office. "Do you realize what you've started? This isn't just about one hotel anymore. People are talking about reform across the entire industry." Elias leaned back in his chair, his eyes sharp. "Good. Let them talk. Change doesn't happen in silence. If the Grand Regency becomes the example, others will follow, or they'll be left behind." It was late afternoon when Elias received an unexpected visitor. Richard, the former receptionist, stormed into the lobby with a local reporter trailing behind him. His face was red with anger, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of guests sipping tea in the lounge. "This man humiliated me," Richard shouted, pointing at Elias, who had just stepped out of the elevator. "He's ruining people's lives for publicity. He's not a hero. He's a tyrant." The reporter eagerly recorded the scene, hoping for drama. Guests and staff froze, waiting to see how Elias would respond. Elias remained calm, walking slowly toward Richard. His presence silenced the room before he even spoke. "You were dismissed because you disrespected a guest, not because of me. You chose arrogance over service. You chose prejudice over professionalism. That is not what this hotel, or any hotel, stands for." Richard sneered. "So you think you're some kind of savior? You just bought your way into power." Elias's voice sharpened. "No, I earned my way here, through hard work, perseverance and vision, something you clearly lack." He gestured toward the staff and guests who now stood united behind him. "Ask them if they feel this place is worse under my leadership. Ask them if respect is something they don't deserve." The reporter turned his camera toward the staff. A housekeeper spoke up, her voice trembling but firm. "For the first time in years, I feel proud to work here. Mr. Johnson gave us hope." Applause spread through the lobby, drowning out Richard's protests. Realizing he had lost the crowd, Richard stormed out, the reporter trailing after him. Elias turned back to his staff. "Never let bitterness distract you from your purpose. We're building something greater here, and no one can tear it down." The cheers that followed were louder than before. Weeks passed and the Grand Regency transformed from a struggling hotel chain into the talk of the industry. Occupancy rates soared, reviews praised the new culture, and staff morale reached heights unseen in years. But Elias wasn't satisfied with just one victory. His vision stretched further. One morning he gathered his executive team in the boardroom. Maps and charts covered the long table, each marked with red pins across the country. "We've proven what respect and leadership can do here," Elias began, his tone commanding. "Now, it's time to expand this vision nationwide." Maya clicked through slides, outlining their growth strategy, renovations in neglected locations, diversity training across all hotels, and community outreach programs. "We'll not only modernize the Grand Regency brand," she explained, "but also redefine what hospitality means." A board member hesitated. "Mr. Johnson, this level of expansion is ambitious. Are we sure the market is ready for such drastic changes?" Elias leaned forward, his eyes unwavering. "The market isn't just ready, it's desperate. People are tired of being treated like second-class citizens. We're not selling rooms, we're selling respect, comfort, and dignity. That's what will set us apart." His words carried weight. The board members exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement. By the end of the meeting, the plan was approved. Renovation crews were scheduled, hiring initiatives launched, and press releases drafted. The Grand Regency was no longer just a hotel chain. It was becoming a movement. That evening, Elias stood on the rooftop terrace, gazing out at the city lights. Maya joined him quietly. "Do you ever think about that night you were turned away?" she asked. Elias smirked. "Every day. It fuels me. That moment wasn't rejection, it was the spark, and now we're unstoppable." Elias's expansion plan didn't just transform the Grand Regency, it sent shockwaves through the entire hotel industry. Within months, his hotels were setting records, higher guest satisfaction, increased bookings, and glowing media coverage. Competitors scrambled to adapt, while some scoffed, claiming his respect-driven model wouldn't last. At an international hospitality conference in New York, Elias was invited as the keynote speaker. Hundreds of executives, investors, and industry leaders filled the ballroom. He stood on stage, confident and composed, while Maya introduced him. "Hospitality isn't just about luxury," Elias began, his deep voice carrying across the room. "It's about humanity. For too long, hotels have catered only to appearances while ignoring the very foundation of service, dignity. At the Grand Regency, we've proven that when people feel respected, success follows." Applause echoed, though not everyone clapped. In the front row, CEOs from rival chains exchanged tense whispers. Some feared Elias's rise, others envied it, and a few plotted against him. After the speech, a rival executive approached him with a stiff smile. "Impressive words, Mr. Johnson. But don't you think you're making this industry political?" Elias met his gaze without flinching. "Respect isn't political. It's basic. If that threatens you, then maybe it's your practices that need to change." Back at the Grand Regency, employees watched the speech live-streamed in the staff lounge. They cheered, proud to be part of something bigger than themselves. The once struggling chain was now leading a revolution. That evening, as Elias returned to his suite, Maya handed him a folder. "Competitors are feeling the pressure. Some are even trying to undercut us, but others want a partner." Elias smiled faintly. "Good. Let them choose, fight us or join us. Either way, the future belongs to those who value people first. Success had a price." As the Grand Regency thrived, rivals grew desperate. Anonymous leaks appeared in the press, claims of financial instability, accusations of unfair hiring, whispers of corruption. None were true, but they were timed to damage Elias's growing influence. One evening, Maya burst into his office with a grim expression. "Elias, it's coming from inside. Someone in our own ranks is feeding information to the press." Elias's jaw tightened. "Find out who." Days later, the truth surfaced. One of the senior managers he had spared during the early firings, Henry Lowell, was the mole. Henry had secretly met with a competitor, offering insider information in exchange for a lucrative position elsewhere. Elias confronted him in the boardroom. Henry sat smugly, convinced he had outsmarted his employer. "You may own the chain, Johnson, but you don't own loyalty. Money talks, and your vision is just a fad." The room fell silent as Elias leaned across the table, his gaze sharp as steel. "Loyalty isn't bought, Henry. It's earned. You sold your integrity for scraps, and for that, you're finished." Security escorted Henry out, but the damage was done. Reporters hounded the hotel, and shareholders grew uneasy. Maya worried aloud, "If we don't handle this carefully, it could undermine everything we've built." Elias stood before the window, overlooking the glittering skyline. "Let them doubt. We'll answer not with words, but results. They want to test our resolve? Then we'll show them strength." That night, Elias addressed the entire company via livestream. His voice carried both authority and reassurance. "We faced betrayal, but we will not be broken. The Grand Regency is more than a hotel. It's a promise, and promises don't crumble under lies." The applause across branches worldwide reassured him. His people still believed. And Elias knew the final battle was near. The grand ballroom of the luxury hotel was filled with applause, cameras flashing from every direction. Reporters from international outlets had gathered, eager to cover the man who had shocked the world. Elias Johnson, the billionaire who had once been turned away from this very place, now stood at the center of the stage, its proud new owner. With a calm smile, Elias raised his hand, silencing the crowd. "When I was rejected here," he began, his voice steady but powerful, "it wasn't just me being denied a room. It was every person who has ever been judged by their skin, their background, or their appearance. Today, we end that chapter forever." The staff who had once mocked him stood at the back, humbled and silent. Some had already been replaced, while others were undergoing rigorous training under Elias's new policy of zero tolerance for discrimination. He unveiled the hotel's new name, the Unity Grand. A cheer erupted. Elias continued, "This hotel will not just be a place of luxury, but a symbol of dignity and respect. No guest will ever again face the humiliation I endured. Leah, standing proudly by his side, squeezed his hand. She whispered, "You didn't just buy a building, Elias. You changed history." As the applause thundered once more, Elias looked out across the room, his heart swelling with pride. He had turned pain into power, rejection into ownership, and injustice into reform. Walking off the stage, Elias paused to take one last glance at the golden lights shimmering across the ballroom. This was no longer a place of exclusion. It was a monument to resilience, a reminder to the world that dignity cannot be denied, and respect must always prevail.